Hello and welcome to the One Take Show, a podcast where we celebrate incredible conversations with some fantastic people. In this episode, joining me is Miss Mini Gyan Gautam. Ma'am is a partner at AQUILAW. She specializes in corporate commercial laws, in data privacy laws, and various other fields. She has previously worked as a senior legal manager at National Stock Exchange of India. And in this episode, she talks about her experience in law school. She also talks about the various strategies that we can use to navigate a successful career in in-house roles in law firms. I think this is the kind of conversation which was indispensably required in this podcast. If you like this episode, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned to the very end of this episode because this is the kind of conversation that will change your perspectives. Hence, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump right in. Hello, ma'am. Welcome to the One Take Show. What a pleasure it is for any law student, may it be me or anyone else, to learn from your vast experience, to grow with that experience, and actually talk about all those various topics that we are going to cover, which is going to add so much value to anyone who tries to learn from your experience and follow your footsteps itself. So thank you so much for taking time off your really busy schedule, sitting down with me for this amazing conversation that we're going to have.
You're most welcome, Costa, and I think you're doing great work. It's a great initiative that you have, and bringing experience of professionals to the law students, and so that they can also learn from the experiences of others. So Thank you so much. Thanks for reaching out to me, and great work. Just keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Before we get into the various topics that we would like to cover in this conversation, obviously they're very important. A major aspect about conversations with legal professionals is their journey with law and what inspired you to pick up law as an area or as a field that has inspired you, and what was your journey with law school and your initial phases. So please, could you tell me a little bit about your journey?
Sure, Kaustubh. So the thing is, I think law is more like a way of life. It is not just any other means of livelihood. It's called a profession, and it is something that you carry with you through your life. So that is why, being a lawyer, I was really interested in law. We did civil rights in school, and then after that, I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something which can make a difference to society as well. And the thing with law is it is very interesting, and it is a lot of common sense. So most of the legal subjects you see, they are completely based on common sense. What is contract law? It is nothing but just basic sense that if I'm giving you a pen and you're paying me for it, and that is how there's a proposal, there's an acceptance, there's a consideration, and that is a legally binding contract. So most of legal principles and tenets are based on common sense. They are based on practical usefulness to society as a whole, and of course maintaining law and order in the society. And law, I think, has really grown over the years. So earlier the way law was perceived and the way it is perceived now, there is a marked change. Even when I joined law school about 15 years ago and today, there's a big difference in the kind of options available for lawyers. So the options were very limited at that time, but now, everyday law is expanding as a field, as a profession. So there is just so much that you can do. You will never have a dull day as a lawyer. So in law school as well, most of the subjects I found that they were very interesting. There was the law of contracts has always been my favorite, and it is something that I found has helped me throughout my life. And of course, Companies Act, Transfer of Property Act, and all these things have really, built the foundation on what I am doing today. The principles have really helped me, and I think the interest developed then. But of course, law school does not prepare you at all for what life of a lawyer actually is. And it is only when you spend a few years in the profession, even then, if I see my journey, so first 2 years, next 2 years, it's like you're growing every day tremendously. So, the kind of lawyer that you are when you set out, the kind of lawyer that you are after 5 years, and the kind of lawyer that you are after 10 years, there's a lot of difference, which is why, they say that as a lawyer, the best thing is that you're learning and you're growing every day. And you'll basically never get tired. You'll never get bored because there's so much happening. So I think in my journey, that's what's thrilled me the most, that, there is just so much to do and so much to learn.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think this is a principle which really somehow defines this entire career option that a lot of students now have picked up. And now, with these changing times, are now trying to explore more and more such various fields which are now ancillary to legal field. One of those fields is the position of an in-house counsel. You've had an experience, a very rich experience for that matter, with in-house counsel. And I would like to learn from you, what was your experience with in-house counsel, and what was the various transformations that you've observed in the career option that in-house counsel offers to various aspirants in the legal field?
Sure. So, Kaustubh, see, I see many good law students, they have this mindset that we need to enter a law firm, we need to be in one of the big law firms, right? But, I started my career as an in-house counsel. And after that, I was careful to select in-house jobs where the exposure was more. And what I found is that the in-house role has really evolved over the years. So it is not limited at all, if you're working in a company where most of the work is done in-house, because see, cost cutting is a mandate for all organizations. So
Absolutely.
Most organizations are trying to build their own teams which can advise them on day-to-day on operational issues. And only when they have a bandwidth issue that they, reach out to external law firms. So the idea is to have those capacities inbuilt within your system, within your company. So, which is why, in all the in-house roles that I did, and after a point, I was very picky with the ones that I was choosing. And I was always very careful to ask, how much of the work is actually done in-house. So, only where the work was being done in-house, and I was sure that the exposure would not be in any way lesser than that of a law firm. I mean, of course, there are certain definite differences between the role of a lawyer and, within a company and the role of a lawyer, an external consultant. But despite that, to the extent possible, because some companies, they are not so keen to build their own expertise. They are okay with, on a case by case basis hiring law firms. But the companies which do build, are more conscious of building a strong in-house team. And I've seen that is the growing trend amongst most organizations. So there the role of a lawyer has really evolved, because a lawyer who is working with the company from within, he knows he or she, they know the business inside out. So you are constantly dealing with your, basically when you work in-house, your business is your client. So you are constantly interacting with them. You're constantly, learning about the business from them. So I have had, my business team show me how construction equipment works. And that has, these are the things that obviously, that you don't spend that kind of time when you're an external advisor. But when you're working within a company, then you are really, that interest develops, because, in whatever the business of the company is, you really develop a keen sense of business. You develop a keen understanding into the company's business and financials, and basically, the company at the back of your hand. And then the kind of, advice that you give, it is specifically catered. In fact, when you work in-house and you are, taking external advisors on board, so then you are in a position to tell them. So, just by virtue of working in a place day after day, you know everything about the place, everything, the pain points of the company, the issues and challenges which are specific to the company. And even if you're getting an external advisor on board, you are in a position to act as a kind of a medium between them. Because as a lawyer, you already know the law. And because you're working as an in-house counsel, you also know the commercials very well. So you help to plug the gap between external consultants and your own company. So from that perspective, I found that the in-house roles were very, very fulfilling, and definitely, they're definitely not boring, or it's not that you don't get any exposure in an in-house role. That whole mindset change has already happened.
Okay. And for the legal aspirants who are trying to enter this field and perhaps exploit the opportunities in in-house roles, what are those basic key attributes, or let's say the skill sets, that you would suggest that every legal aspirant should somehow aim to acquire to make themselves suitable for such roles?
So one of the things is, like, they should be really willing to learn and listen. So, because every company, comes from a separate industry, right? So you should be really willing and interested in learning about that specific industry. So if you're working with a media company, you should be keen to know how a media company works. If you're working in a non-banking finance company, you should be keen to know how a non-banking finance company works. If you're working in an FMCG, you should have that interest, and you should take out the time and make that effort to really understand the nuances of that particular industry. Because
Okay.
once you do that, you can give better advice. Because as a lawyer, you will always know your general laws, but the laws that are specific to your industry, one, you should be very thorough with them. So whichever organization you want to join, you should be very clear on what are the laws that are applicable to this specific industry, to this specific sector, to this specific company, and then you should have those at the back of your hand. And then you will, of course, you should be willing to take advice from your business team, from your commercial team. You should be willing to speak to your promoters at the drop of a hat. That is the kind of involvement that is expected from in-house lawyers now, that at any point of time the chairman can call you to brief him or her at any point of time, and you need to have everything at the back of your hand, all the facts of whatever is happening, whatever the legal issues you're handling, and specifically the laws that are specific to your particular company.
Right, right. And I think that somehow exemplifies all the basic requirements that one should keep in mind when they try to somehow find their interest in in-house roles and also pursue their interest in this field.
Yes, you could work in a specific industry, or if you want, you can get a flavor of different industries as well. See, normally what happens if you stick to an industry too long, you'll get typecast, and then you would probably. So my advice to most people is that do more of a general kind of a role where you are getting exposure to all the general corporate laws, and also so that you become industry agnostic. So then you can shift from one industry to another very easily, rather than unless your passion lies in one particular industry and you really enjoy that work and you want to stick to doing that for the rest of your life. But if you're not sure, then you should keep your options open and have more of a general idea of everything.
Right, right. I think you've already answered this, but are you suggesting that we should promote some sort of industrial versatility as against of industrial specialization in a particular field?
Yes, because see, if you're sure that, okay, if you're like really interested in IPR and I'm okay with doing this for a long time, but what if you're not, so then you should at least, especially in the initial years of your career, you should have an idea, because general corporate is a field, see, some of the basic principles will apply everywhere. So contracts and, real estate related issues, these are there in almost every company, and some basic IPR issues. So that is a basic understanding of everything you must have. And then after that, if you wish, you can build on that. You can, you really enjoy one particular area, because there's also a demand for niche practitioners. But if you're not sure of what you want to do, then the best thing is to have more of a general idea. And especially, later, if you want to join a law firm or you want to work in a more varied role, then, it is always good to have an idea of more things, because many mid-sized law firms, nowadays, everybody is advising on everything. So it is best if you can get as big an exposure as possible.
Perfect, perfect. And as you've mentioned that there are further stages in your career where you can actually exploit such versatility. As you mentioned, one can actually move to a law firm. This brings me to your experience personally, where you've had a shift from in-house roles to being a partner in a reputable law firm. And you've obviously had a very variety sort of the engagement when it comes to matters, or perhaps the engagement in certain areas of law. What was that experience like, and what inspired you to make that shift from in-house roles to being a partner in a law firm?
Sure. So even in the initial days of my career, I did have a stint at a law firm for a while. But yes, predominantly my exposure was more of in-house roles. But as I said, I carefully chose those in-house roles which were giving me good exposure. So I find that in today's time that boundary has become blurred, because if you are a committed professional in an in-house role and you have given that kind of time and effort and invested that kind of energy in actually understanding the laws and not just giving robotic advice, because business often comes and earlier the mindset was more that you just have to go to legal to get a on paper approval, but now it's not like that. Now the legal team is a risk mitigation center, so you are supposed to understand, identify all the risks, communicate it to your business team, and sometimes you have to take a strong position also that this is legally not permissible, so you cannot do this. So when you are used to that kind of in-depth research and analysis, which thankfully I was, so for me the shift has not been a problem, because of course there are certain aspects of law firm practice, of independent practice, which are quite different from working within an organization. But I think those are more of practices and policies of law firms compared to in-house roles. But as far as my practice, my understanding, my in-depth research of the law itself is concerned, I think I'm still doing what I used to do. And
Okay.
I had that keen interest even when I was in house. So it's never I never relied on external sources. I always did my own checks. I always did my own research. So because of those habits that I built in house, I have also been able to so basically it's all about giving correct advice, right? So whether you are doing it to one client or now you're doing it to multiple clients. But of
Fair.
course, there are certain aspects of firms which are different. That there is billing, there is, of course, it's a different environment, and you're advising multiple clients. You're no longer just advising one client in one industry. So today you could be advising a client in the food industry. Tomorrow it could be the fashion industry. The after tomorrow it could be a bank. So that kind of flexibility is required from you when you're working in an in-house. But the basics will always remain the same. And from that perspective, I've never faced a problem. And I felt that with my experience, I really felt that I could do a kind of a consulting and an independent practice, and I could really give clients the kind of services that I felt they deserve. So from that, I think that was the main reason why I shifted from in-house roles to a law firm.
Absolutely. I think that somehow defines what would go inside someone's mind who's trying to shift from one in-house role to one law firm role when it comes to being a partner, and also how wonderfully you explained how there are differences in the roles and the kind of effects that both these job profiles have on someone's career. This brings me to a rather selfish question on my part also, but for all the law students who would like to know from you that when it comes to working in a law firm, which is I think a very a job profile that is something which is very sought after, the what are those basic attributes that you would suggest, or what are the things that you would suggest that fresh legal aspirants or law students should keep in mind to somehow make their presence felt in a law firm, or somehow be able to carve out a niche for themselves in a law firm?
So one is the willingness to work for long hours, the willingness to do a lot of research, because especially in your formative years, the thing that is expected from you is more on the research and the drafting part. So getting these two things clear. So the ideal thing is to do as many internships, to work with as many seniors, interact with more and more seniors. So the more you speak to people, the more you understand on how you can go about planning your own career. So for law students, my advice would be just work with as many firms as possible. Don't just chase the bigger law firms, because sometimes in a big firm you may not have any kind of a role. You may be a small fish in a big pond, and you may not be able to contribute in any manner. So it is sometimes it is also good to work with a small firm, a mid-sized firm. Choose the partner carefully. So whether it's an internship or whether it's a job, do your
Okay.
research, do your understand who the partner is, understand what their practice areas are, and just see where your interest lies. So if you are
Okay.
interested in a particular practice area, really pursue the partners in firms who are from those practice areas, and ask them questions, and try to learn as much as possible from them, and secure internships there. Also, if it may not be possible to always get internships, the simplest thing is to just read. So find whichever other blogs which are relevant, whichever other articles which are relevant. Just keep reading, because every time you invest time into something, it's going to stay with you. So knowledge never goes waste. So whether you
Absolutely.
get the knowledge theoretically or whether you get it through a practical experience, a culmination of all that knowledge will always be there in your mind.
True.
So
True. So I believe this somehow answers the question that is it enough for me to just apply to a law firm through my CV and my statement of purpose? No, I should research on the law firm, perhaps look
yes.
forward to this. I think you've already answered this question, but just for a clarity of thought here, I would request you to please, if you could, in a pointers, tell me that how should law students pick a law firm? Although you've somehow covered this, but when it comes to picking a law firm or deciding where to work and how to work, as you mentioned that we should be aware of whether we want to work in a top tier law firm or in a mid-sized law firm, or which partner, what would be those pointers that we should keep in mind so that we can make a note of them and start acting upon them?
Sure. So one is the practice area. So if you're interested in a particular practice area and you really want to grow in that, see, sometimes one's interests also change. So when you start off, you may think, okay, IPR is very cool, but when you actually go to work on it, you might feel, oh, this is more procedural. I'm not enjoying it as much as I thought I would. So it's okay to, it's okay to experiment. See, when you're a student, when even up to the first 4-5 years of your career, it's the best time for you to experiment. You can always change. You can change sectors. You can change industries, you can change firms, you can change companies, and basically just find out where your interest lies and what really, what's your passion. Because, the way you consider something, and especially in law schools, the kind of education that is imparted, sometimes it's really limited, and it does not give you an actual idea of what to expect later in life. So that's why, the best thing is to keep on experimenting, and make a list of all the law firms that you're interested in, see which are, which firms specialize in which areas, see which partners, listen to the partners speaking at different events, see which partners you think, when you approach somebody to be your mentor, then be sure that this is somebody whom you would want as a mentor. This is somebody whom you aspire to be like in the next 10 years. And
Okay.
do that kind of research. And, and really, because sometimes, again, the way you expect, some people may not turn out to be that way. So also, so do that kind of research, do the kind of, basically read up a lot about the particular firms, try to, read whatever articles there are, read whatever deals that they have done in the last 5 years, whatever, because all these details are published. So most of these are there in all the, legal websites. They will give you, so basically do a thorough background check. And if you're not sure, you can opt for a more general role in a law firm. If you are sure and you want to try your hand at a specialist law firm, then you can do that also. So many people have made great careers, working in a niche field, as opposed to, a general one. So you could, and those options are there now. So you can opt for competition law, you can opt for data privacy, you can opt for working more on insolvency related practice. So just find which area you want to specialize in and zero in on firms accordingly.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned areas of practice, we know there is data privacy. That is something that interests you. As you mentioned, that there are other areas such as insolvency. Perhaps there's law and technology that is now booming. What are those lucrative areas of law or areas of practice that you perhaps see catching the traction or somehow providing opportunities for law students and legal aspirants that we should be aware of in order to be able to exploit them?
So anytime, a new law comes, obviously that will become a hot area of law. So insolvency, when it came, so it's within the last 4-5 years. So the code came, and, that became a big thing. And now the data privacy bill, and across the world, data privacy related issues have become so important. With
Absolutely.
Facebook and all the social media, and, and all our details are available everywhere all the time, including details by which we can be personally, identified. So they become of a very sensitive nature. So
Okay.
so that's important to understand, which area of law has come into focus because of what, recently there was a huge, shift towards prevention of sexual harassment at the workplace, because, the law was passed, and then there was a requirement to set up a committee, and then a lot of people wanted to specialize in that. They wanted to, give training sessions on that, and because, so when a new law comes, a requirement comes along with it, to cater to that. And of course, there are certain areas which developed maybe not that recently, but maybe in the last 20 years, like competition law, consumer protection, intellectual property. Because obviously, 50 years ago, these things were not that popular. But the whole idea about specializing in something like this, and, really growing a practice which is focused on one area of law, that is something which has, again, happened in the last few years. If you like to advise startups, then that is also something you can consider, because that is not, again, it is not something which is related to a specific area of law. A startup could face issues, panning across multiple areas of law. They would want to know how to register their company. They would want to know how to protect their brand. They might have operational issues. But again, because of so basically, as the economy grows, as the legal system changes, a lot of laws come into place, a lot of requirements are built up, and basis those requirements, you need to build your skill set and your area of expertise as well.
Perfect. And as you mentioned, that there are changing times, and with changing times, there are new opportunities that open up. Being quite aware of the same, the pandemic is obviously now changing the entire industry for better or the worse, is somehow transforming the practice in different ways possible. What do you think is the impact of pandemic on legal practice, and what are the changes that we should be aware of?
So firstly, lawyers are very adaptable human beings. So wherever required, we will fit in and we will find a way. So,
Absolutely.
initially, initially when the pandemic started, of course, there was chaos. But then, law firms and lawyers, they basically changed their, the job of a lawyer is to basically understand the changing requirements of the client, right? So the general business was initially not happening, but then clients wanted to know that, what about our existing contracts? What about our contractual obligations? Force majeure, there were multiple webinars and sessions on force majeure. What does it mean? Before that, nobody was even looking at it in a contract, and suddenly it became very relevant because suddenly everybody realized, okay, this can be classified as a force majeure. We can use this as an excuse to not pay. We can use this as an excuse to, get some maybe additional timelines under our contract. So basically, lawyers, I think, have really adapted. And there is one thing that, for corporate lawyers, I always feel that, work from home, if it can be done, then why not? I mean, because again, I think that is something which the pandemic has also taught most law firms, that it is possible to survive, even outside the brick and mortar building of your office. The work has been continuing. The work hasn't stopped for a day. So, I think people have obviously become wiser. I don't know whether this wisdom will last when the pandemic gets over, but I'm hoping it will. And people are also realizing that, it's possible to, and using technology as a friend. There are multiple, finally, people are realizing that technology can be your best friend. You can really use it to, see, there's not as, all the meetings have happened over Zoom, all the meetings have happened over Microsoft Teams. So that kind of, you basically realize that it's not possible. You don't have to always sit face to face across a table over a cup of coffee to, really discuss issues. That may not always be the case. So this is something that, lawyers have realized. They've adapted to it. And a lot of the, since the deals are also going slow, transactions are going slow. So a lot of the legal work has changed more in the opinion of advisory and, providing correct opinions to their clients. And of course, business has been picking up in the last 1 or 2 months as well. Since the lockdown conditions have been eased a little. So things are returning to normal, but of course it would probably take another 6 months or so for things to be absolutely fine. But I think there has been a shift, and again, the various areas of, there are different areas of law that focus is now turning to. Like I said, data privacy, labor related issues. When the pandemic initially started, that was the first question on everyone's mind. Like, do we need to pay our workers or not? So these are the kind of, so the questions changed, but I think the role of lawyers will always be relevant.
Absolutely. I think there was no better explanation to these questions. The kind of summarized in a way that can actually be understood by law students, legal aspirants to act upon them and somehow try to adapt to the various possibilities. This has been a mind-blowing conversation on multiple fronts. Before I end this conversation in any way, I just have a very sort of a personal question here, because I while researching for this episode of the podcast, I came across your book that you've authored, and this might sound like a rather offbeat question, but I think you've authored a wonderful book. The book's named The Gutter Princess, Diary of an Unwilling Prostitute, and there you've authored multiple articles as well. My question to you rather is that authoring a book and writing, has it helped you professionally as well?
Yes, absolutely. So, I've been writing since I was 10 years old. So, it is something that keeps, it is something that keeps my mind fresh, because, I generally write fiction. So, when you're, the legal profession at times can be a little, stressful and challenging as well. We have deadlines, we have multiple, and in the corporate world, recently I was doing a session where we were talking about, work-life balance. And people are saying, now work-life balance has become an illusion. You can't really expect it. It's not about the number of hours that you get with your family. You probably need to add to the quality of those hours that you will get, because you will not be able to, you can never divide it equally. You do spend, 9, 10, 11 hours of the day working. So that is why you need to have some kind of an outlet, some kind of an interest, so that you don't get bogged down with your work. And I personally feel, we should never be people with just one kind of personality or with just one kind of interest. If you really want to be happy in life, you need to have multiple interests. And writing is something that really gets my mind, off, any kind of work-related stress. And if nothing else, I'll just jot down my thoughts at the end of the day on in a diary. And so you don't even, I'm not even looking to publish that, but it's more like, it's for my own, basically it's for my own happiness. So I like to strive for a balance that way.
Perfect. I think this also explains why it is important for leaders and luminaries who reach to a particular point in their career to also have that kind of, as you mentioned, work-life balance, and also that teaches the fresh legal aspirants as to how they can also somehow inculcate these attributes into their personality to have an all-round sort of an approach towards their career as well as their lives. What a wonderful conversation, ma'am. Thank you so much for taking
Thank you
time
so
off
much.
your
Thanks for having
current.
me.
Absolutely. Do you
Thank
have
you
any?
so much and wish you the very best. And you're doing really good work. So keep it up.
Thank
You're
you.
going to have
Thank
a
you
very
so much.
bright future. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
ma'am.
Bye bye.